President Obama's policy in Afghanistan, you're supporting George W. Bush's policy in Afghanistan. They're the same policy, except that one involves 100,000 U.S. troops in Afghanistan, and the other under Bush was more like 25,000. So how we justify this war, it's really beyond me. I don't understand it, because the terrorism, you know, I don't want to go on and on with this, but if you read a book like Taliban by Ahmed Rashid, you read the book Ghost Wars by Steve Cole, you see how the United States government from the early 1980s has been actively aligned with and funded misogynists, the most horrific fundamentalists, and we have been funding them all the way through. And they're part of the cabinet right now, the government that we're supporting. So I'm getting off my soapbox because I could go on all night. But thanks for that question.
I'm just curious, 9/11 being very similar in many aspects to the Gulf of Tonkin, a lot of questions. Today, 1,000 architects and engineers had a press conference in San Francisco stating that they don't agree with the official story. So I'm just wondering, you know, what's your take on that? Do you have any?
Sometimes I hear critique as though we didn't really have a major militarism problem in this country till 9/11. And some people believe that if we can only expose what, quote unquote, really happened on 9/11, then we'll be able to put the militarism genie back in the bottle. In fact, militarism has been central to U.S. foreign policy since the Vietnam War, at least. And then you could go back to 1898, when Mark Twain was denouncing the Christianization effort that President McKinley was ordering a war on the Philippines. And if Mark Twain were around today, they wouldn't let him on cable networks. He would have been considered too extreme because he was an anti-imperialist. My point is that this is not a phenomenon that was made possible by 9/11. This is a phenomenon that is made not only possible, but happens because of the profit system that drives these wars. So I don't agree with the contention that if we can only say what really happened on 9/11, somehow we will undermine the warfare state. The warfare state's been here way before 9/11, and that's a reality. So that's my perspective.
However difficult this vote may be, some of us must urge the use of restraint. Our country is in a state of mourning. Some of us must say, let's step back for a moment. Let's just pause just for a minute. And think through the implications of our actions today so that this does not spiral out of control.
The blank check that Barbara Lee was speaking against is a check that's still being cashed. It was cashed by George W. Bush. It's cashed by President Obama. And implicitly, it is a blank check that exists for perpetuity. I mean, how long does 9/11 justify the United States bombing any country it chooses? We're up to what?
Until we get the
9 years? Is it 18 years? Is it 27 years? Are our grandchildren and great-grandchildren going to say, we got to say goodbye to daddy and mommy to go off to war because of what happened on September 11, 2001?
Do you want to clear any of that air and say that you do?
I'm for investigation before verdict. I don't like the idea of verdict first, now let's have an investigation. And that bothers me because if people say, we know exactly what happened, now let's have an investigation, I'm thinking, I don't think so.
I hear you.
I want an independent investigation.
I hear you. That's wonderful. And so you are familiar with the architects and engineers because they try to stay away from the who done it and the why and try to put their degrees more towards like what they're familiar with. Wonderful. Thanks.
Hey, take care.
Keep up the good work. Thank you.
Again, the drums are beating now on Iran. Did you notice the front page, the Secretary of State is calling for regime change in and around, does that have a familiar echo here? You know, as well. As critical as I am of all these elected officials, you know, Nancy Pelosi and President Obama, I think we have a tremendous burden that we haven't taken up yet. We need to organize much more effectively, and that means pressuring all of our electeds and developing progressive mechanisms to change those who are in power. If we don't do that, then we are aiding and abetting.